Hi, thanks for joining me in this short and helpful relationship video, one of many that I plan on doing. I hope you've got a pen and paper or your favorite digital notepad available, because I promise you that you're going to want to walk away from this short presentation with some notes and some things that I think you'll find are very helpful insights. I want to talk about how to get your spouse to truly listen, not just listen, but to truly listen. I want to talk about some other things as well, but the listening part is we all want to be heard. When it comes to communication, we know how important it is to listen. Intuitively, we recognize that listening demonstrates value. It says to the speaker, your words matter to me. Even if I disagree with you, I'm listening and trying my best to understand because I care about you. When my wife is upset with me over something, and it happens, most of the time she just wants to be heard. In fact, about 90% of the time, the problem is resolved when she feels truly understood. No one wants to be ignored. Everyone wants to experience the connection of healthy and meaningful communication. And I've been wrestling with the worst cold of my life. You might hear it in my voice, and including my first ear infection in about 50 years. To say that it has affected my hearing would be a gross understatement. Besides being a relationship and life coach, where I listen a lot, I'm also a business consultant and an event speaker. And in those two roles, a great deal of my time and energy goes into preparing talks like this one for people to hear, or consultations for me to present to a board or to a group. I'm pretty sure I fall under the category of people who like the sound of their own voice. And honestly, I do. I like to talk. And as a speaker and a consultant, I tend to do a lot of that. My cold, however, started with a horrible sore throat that shut my overactive mouth down for about 3 days, and it hurt to talk, so I didn't. But I soon went from being unable to speak to not being able to hear. It wasn't fun to be sick, but I did learn some things through all of this. I guess it reminded some things that I really want to share with you. If I had to choose, I'd choose hearing over talking. I would. I know that might surprise you with that statement, but I'd choose hearing over talking. Perhaps the best part of my sickness was what I learned about listening during that time. Some things that I needed to be reminded of. One of them is listening is the best way to learn. Nobody gets smarter or wiser by talking. Talking a lot might make us feel or look smart, but listening is the only way we truly can grow. Listening communicates value to those in my life. And I can tell people I love them, and that's good. I should say that often. But listening says it better. Did you know that? Listening says, I love you. Listening to someone and hearing his or her heart says, you matter to me. You are an important part of my life. Listening is a selfless act. Talking tends to be all about me. So it takes effort to hear and understand what someone is saying. It takes patience not to interrupt, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But not being able to hear very well has reminded me of the value of listening. Maybe, as the saying goes, there is a reason why we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Let me give some things to think about. Here are 4 things I learned through my unplanned vow of silence. I'll just recap these quickly. First was listening is the best way to learn. I said that. Nobody gets smarter or wiser by talking. Talking a lot makes us feel or look smart, I guess, but listening is the only way to truly grow. Second thing, listening communicates value to others. I mentioned that as well, but I can tell someone, you matter to me, but listening says it way better. Listening to someone communicates, hey, I care about you. I want to hear you. I want to know what's in your mind and your heart. What are you thinking about? The third thing, listening is a selfless act, while talking tends to be, again, like all about me. It takes effort to hear and understand what someone is saying, and it takes patience to not interrupt. All too often, instead of being fully present while someone is talking, I'm thinking about what I'm going to say, or listening is part there and part not there. But listening again is a self-sacrificing way to be otherly. And number 4, the 4th thing I've been reminded of is that listening is the pathway to intimacy. I'm drawn deeper and into more meaningful relationship when I hear someone's heart and connect with their soul by listening. Now, yes, of course, 2-way communication is critical to intimacy, but it starts with listening first. Yeah, I want them to hear me, but I need to hear them. And a wise man once wrote, the wise listen and add to their learning. And for anyone to answer before listening is shameful. Words to think about. And a guy named James gave this advice: everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. when you are struggling with this? What do you do when you feel like someone is not listening to you? How do you function in a relationship that seems one-sided because the other person is talking, doing all the talking, and not listening to you? Well, here's some things to try, and I'm going to give you 4 things that I want you to consider. And I know the first one, you go, yeah, whatever. No, really, the first one matters. Number 1 is be patient. Be patient. Sometimes a person is not ready to listen. Maybe they need to vent. Maybe they need to calm down. And rather than press an issue and attempt to immediately download your thoughts into their minds, give it time. Wait. Your patience might give them time to gain a different perspective, or at least give them a better shot at listening. Second thing is, when the time is right, and you'll know when it is, then appeal to them, and appeal to them in love. What does that mean? What do I mean by that? Well, when things have settled down a bit, ask them, can I share my heart with you right now? I'd like to discuss this with you, but I want to know if you're ready to listen. When that is asked and done in a non-sarcastic way, in a non-sarcastic and gentle way, it often softens the soul. People go, oh yeah. And say, can you help me? Because I want to share something with you. Okay. Third thing is try to dial it down a bit. In other words, being overly emotional often creates a tense environment. You know that's true. So hopefully you and the other person have had some time to chill. Take a time out. That's okay. Trust me, the quickest way to re-escalate things again is to inflame defensiveness in someone by not giving them time to really chill and to relax. It's best not to use phrases like, you always or you never when communicating. Instead of saying, you made me mad, or I got upset when you said, because it's not wise to do that. Just own your own feelings. Here's a 4th thing. Ask them to mirror back to you what they heard. Mirror back to you what they heard. Again, in a non-threatening and non-condescending way. Ask, what are you hearing me say? Mirroring back is a surefire way to know if they've heard you or not. It also gives you the opportunity to restate and to clarify if that's not what you said. And people often don't hear right. So by saying, what did you hear me say? Gives them a moment to say back, okay, no, it's different. See, communication is difficult, but listening is a skill that can be developed, and it's worth it in every relationship. Okay, let's get to the heart of this. So what do you do when you feel ignored? What do you do? Well, don't give up. Keep at it. When we quit on people because we feel like they've not heard us or they're never listening, then we forget that plenty of people have given you an opportunity as well. Let me read into this a little bit. I want to talk to you about conflict, because conflict is often involved in this issue of listening. And conflict puts us between this rock and the proverbial hard place. And the rock is the truth, and the hard place is our feelings and our emotions, which usually don't give a rip about the truth. We don't care. When we're hurt or angry or upset, it's really hard to step back and to take an honest look at what's truly going on, because we're stuck in this difficult place. Now, nobody likes conflict. Most of us try to avoid it. But in reality, conflict is common to most relationships, even healthy ones. It's common. In fact, I doubt that any of us will ever be conflict-free. But whether the end result is good and healthy or not is up to us. Most relationships experience some measure of conflict and tension. They really do. And I have said that because I know that to be true. It takes 2 to tango. But your ability to handle conflict and resolve differences can and will make a huge impact on your relationship. What we're going to take a look at, and what I'm going to share with you, is simple, but not necessarily easy. That's what we need to do. It's not complicated, but it can be hard. And here's a little extra bonus to this talk today: how to handle conflict and resolve differences. And number 1, kind of like number 1 before, you won't like it, but number 1 is be humble. Be humble. Now, humble doesn't mean a doormat. People get that all messed up. There are healthy relationship boundaries that you need to establish. But a humble person does not think of himself as better or smarter or stronger than the other person. They see and know the value of all humans, of that person they're talking to, that they're in conflict with. And therefore, before they treat that person poorly, they treat him as something precious and worthy of honor. Humility is not self-depreciation. It's not thinking of yourself as nothing but a worm. But it's not self-promoting either. Humble people don't make others feel bad, and they don't put others down by lifting themselves up. The minute we cop a superior, I'm better than you attitude, we set ourselves up for conflict. And that's why I say be humble. Think about how often arrogance and pride are at the heart of our battles with others. They are the attitudes that lead to war between nations, families, and individuals. When I turned 16, my dad told me to go get a job. So a week after I turned 16, I went to Alpha Beta grocery store, this is a long time ago, and walked in, and the store manager, his name was Ron. He was a big man, about 6'5" and probably 300 pounds, and he had a very intimidating appearance. And when I met him, I told him I was looking for a job, and he asked me a few questions, and he said, well, fine, I'll hire you, but he gave me a couple of conditions. One is you got to cut your hair. It was the 70s. Second is I need you to change your name. I said, what? I don't understand. He said, well, I already have 2 Kurts, he said. So I can't have a third Kurt working for me. So he said, what's your middle name? I said, William. And he said, fine. For the next 3 years, I was called Bill. He said, I'll hire you, Bill, if you get your hair cut and you don't mind me calling you Bill. And that was very confusing. And on top of it all, Ron was harsh and intimidating, like I said, and he thought that he was God's gift to women. He was cocky and arrogant about everything, and he was never wrong. You never crossed him, and if you tried, it got ugly real quick. On more than one occasion, I'd be out in the store and I'd hear him yelling and arguing with another staff member, someone who had the nerve to stand up to him. And then you'd see that person walking out the front door a few minutes later, never to be seen or heard from again. He fired them, and it was not pretty. Ron's pride and arrogance, he wasn't a humble person, that's my point, made him pugnacious and rude. He lived to have people under his thumb, and conflict with him always led to chaos and destruction. I'm going to suggest that conflict often leads to chaos and destruction. You see, that's why humility is critical, a critical component to healthy conflict resolution. Without it, there's only devastation. So how should we handle conflict, and what can we do to help resolve differences? Well, be humble. Admit your personal growth needs. Humbly follow the golden rule and treat others the way you want to be treated. Okay, number 1, be humble. Number 2, be honest. In other words, be real, be true, be ruthlessly candid about your own condition, about what's going on here. Sometimes, I will tell you though, you spot it because you got it. It's a friend of mine's got that phrase and I stole it. Sometimes you spot it because you got it. And what I mean is, you've got this, you're dealing with it. You need to deal with your stuff first. Work on your character before you worry about someone else's. And obviously that requires a level of honesty that is sometimes difficult for us. Most of us are way too quick to see and point out the other person's problems. And that's just the reality for all humans. Often when couples come to me for marriage coaching, this is what I hear. He tells me what's wrong with her, and she tells me what's wrong with him. They blame each other for the sorry state of their relationship and insist that if the other person would just change, then there would be hope for their marriage. Just fix my spouse and we'll be fine. You know, I've waited in vain for the day when a couple would come to me and each of them would say, Coach, we're struggling, and part of it is my fault. Wouldn't it be awesome if they started there? And if they say, well, I need some help to change so that I can become a better spouse, would you help me? That would just blow my mind. Well, here are some practical steps to resolving conflict that involve honesty. To begin with, admit your part without blaming anyone else. It's humbling. Again, get back to point 1, but just admit, hey, this is what I've done. It doesn't work to say, maybe I shouldn't have said that, Buts always get in the way. Own up to your part of the conflict without blame shifting. Take responsibility. Here's the second thing you can do. Confess your failure without minimizing what you did. Just say, yep, I screwed up. And don't minimize it. Don't say, yeah, but. Don't say, I know I shouldn't have done that, but it's really not that big a deal, especially compared to what you did. Don't go there. Just come clean without any justification or rationalization. It's hard to do, but it'll help you resolve conflict. Here's the third thing. Listen with the goal of truly understanding the other party. We're talking about listening just a bit ago. And this is hard again because we get so defensive. Instead of really listening, we usually are planning our rebuttal. But if we'll stop to honestly hear what they're saying and to understand what they mean, often we'll discover a truth about us or about a situation, our situation that leads to resolution. Here's the fourth thing. Express your hurt without hostility. It's okay. Express your hurt without hostility. Part of being honest is being honest about what you feel. Conflict resolution typically requires some pretty transparent disclosure. That's why you need a coach, in my opinion, because some third party. But emotionally dumping on someone is rarely helpful. Hostility from someone only leads to defensiveness in them. Again, learn to use I statements rather than you. Don't say, you made me mad. Say, I feel angry. And learn to take a time out if you need to. Don't be a prisoner of your emotions. Be honest, but don't be hurtful. Speak the truth in love. And here's One more thing, embrace the practice of true contrition. True contrition. You know, what are the three most powerful words in the English language? You probably thought, well, I love you. Yeah, those are powerful. But you know the five most useful words? I'm sorry, please forgive me. I'm sorry, please forgive me. The relational gap is bridged with others, when we own our stuff and seek their forgiveness. After years of conflict with my dad, and we never had a great relationship, it finally began to heal when he said to me one day, son, I'm sorry. Will you forgive me? In all my years of coaching and working with hundreds and hundreds of people, well over 1,000, I've seen what doesn't work. And it doesn't work when people get arrogant and proud. I see them trip and stumble over all sorts of things. But what they consider perhaps major is sometimes relatively small if they were willing to take their own part. Sometimes, though, they're stockpiling. Lots of little stones become the weight that's unbearable. I get it. But conflict can become an opportunity for us to grow. So when you're caught between a rock and a hard place, learn to be humble and honest. Without a doubt, there are many skills that we can use to handle conflict and resolve differences. But without these two common, very important character traits, skills are just empty promises. The bottom line, conflict does not have to be a relationship killer. It doesn't. In fact, it can reveal opportunities for personal and emotional growth that will lead to stronger and healthier relationship with your spouse, with your partner. So here's some final thoughts, just for fun. Here's a suggestion. Bite your lip and count to 100. You know, we've heard count to 10. No, count to 100 if need be. Try not to react. In fact, underreact. The first thing that comes to your mind, if it's defensive, don't go there. Sit down, be quiet, give it at least an hour or two, take a time out before you respond, and respond rather than react. Second thing is don't be right at the cost of being relational. Sometimes, well, I'm right and she's wrong. Well, don't be right at the cost of being relational. Of course, there's nothing wrong with being right, but you can't be right and dead wrong if you sacrifice relationship on the altar of pride. It's just not about you. Third thing, zoom out. Try to see the bigger picture. I tell my clients all the time, okay, let's zoom out. You get really focused on this. Ask yourself this simple yet powerful question. What is really going on here? What's the bigger picture? Maybe there's an issue behind the issue, and often, I can't tell you, maybe the majority of the time there is. Maybe the person who's hurting you is hurting. You've heard it, hurt people, it's true. Maybe there's something else going on in his or her life that has robbed them of any healthy margins, and loving them puts them in a place where they can grow. And number 4, before you blast them, ask them. Before you blast them, ask them. In other words, before you go tit for tat and give them an earful, ask them why, how, and what questions. Why do you think this has happened? How should I have handled this better with you? What can I do to heal what's damaged or restored and to restore what's been lost? What can I do to help? Again, this is the path of humility. Remember, words matter, so be careful what you say. Number 5, listen more than you speak. Like I mentioned earlier, listening is hard, and it truly is, especially when you've been hurt. When you've been emotionally wounded, your mind works overtime, playing at 1,000 scenarios, things you want to say and how you want to get your point across. We tend to script out our defense and focus most on our needs. And it's not that your needs are important, they are. But if possible, try to sit down and have a face-to-face with the goal of listening first and foremost. Like I mentioned, often 90% of the time that problem will be resolved if the other person feels heard and understood. Here's the 6th thing. Affirm your love before doing anything. Affirm your love before, during, and after any difficult words are spoken. First thing you got to say is, I need you to know I love you no matter what. I need to say that through the conversation. Remember, I love you. There's a place for truth and correction, but as John Maxwell loves to say, people don't care about how much you know until they know how much you care. Here's the 7th thing. If things don't go well and a wall is built to keep you out, try to build a bigger wall to take them in. They build a wall, you just build a bigger wall to take them in. The difference between your wall and their wall is that yours is built to be inclusive and to protect the relationship, not to eliminate it. We can't control the reactions of others. That's a reality. But we can control our attitude. I wish I could tell you that I learned these 7 secrets the easy way, that I learned these 7 things I just covered. That came easy. It didn't. Most of them have come through multiple and painful relational conflicts. The good news is that you don't have to learn everything the hard way. So let me encourage you to decide now to put these 7 relationship practices into play the next time you're in the middle of an emotional explosion. Stop and think about it. Okay, he said to try this, listening, mirror back. Focus on opening your heart and your ears to listen well. And I promise you, if you do these things, you'll make great progress. Now, you may need a coach. And that's what I do, as I come alongside people as a thinking partner to help them figure out how to do this best and to really put a plan into place. So I get it. You may need some support, but these are some things I would encourage you to think about. Hey, thanks for listening to me today. Hope you have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.